Hi, I am Fina Mooney. I have been drawing and painting for 10 years. I am currently 15, and this is the studio I do most of my work in. So today I really want to share with you my story and how it can influence you, and maybe you want to start doing drawing or painting or something like that. But I really want to share with you today how I got there and also some easy, simple steps on how you can create a drawing. So I started drawing and painting when I was about around the age of 5. I was pretty young and I was still really passionate about this, so art was something that was always kind of there for me. I went to many art museums and I wanted to draw and paint like the masters, and so I was always very driven about this love for art. And so eventually my support from my parents and my family buying me art supplies and taking the time to get me to classes and learning and drawing has gotten me to where I am today, and I can't thank them enough for it. It's something I'm really appreciative of. One medium I love to work in is charcoal, specifically Nitram charcoal. It is a fantastic brand, and I've been working in charcoal for several years now, and it's something that really you can capture any sort of life form or something you want to create really easily. So I love this medium so much just for that. If you are a beginner in this medium, there is actually a Nitram Starter Kit that you can purchase. It includes hard, medium, soft, and extra soft charcoal that you can use, as well as a slimmed down sharpening block for you to sharpen your charcoal with some replacement sandpaper. So this is a really great way for you to get started into the medium and kind of get used to it with all the different kinds you might need, and then you don't have to worry about what to buy and how to get started. Nitram charcoal is great to use because you can get a range of values. You can get the really dark areas in your drawing as well as some lighter areas, so you can get that wide tonal range of value that you can't always get with a pencil. When doing this drawing, you also want to get some paper. So for paper, I use the Caisson Mouton paper, but you can get whatever you'd like, whatever tooth you'd like, and I cut it down to a size of 10.5 by 11, just to have some extra room around the drawing I'm trying to create. So let's get started. For the first step, we're going to set up the picture. That means setting up your drawing next to what you want to draw, sharpening your charcoal, putting down your paper on maybe a flat surface that's easy to draw on, and also putting in some of the basic lines that can help you construct where you're going to put your drawing. I think it's really important to get some tape that doesn't damage your picture. I line it up with the reference I'm trying to draw or wherever I want to draw on, so maybe get a good drawing surface such as a drawing board, or maybe you have a desk you work on or an easel. So take your tape and place down your picture nice and tight so that your picture does not move while you're drawing, because that's a really important thing. You don't want your picture moving while you're working on it. Also, sharpen your charcoal. So get your charcoal ready before you start drawing. You can do this by pressing your new stick of charcoal at a bit of an angle and pressing it down against the paddle. You can also use the smaller one that comes with the Nitram Starter Kit. I find that one works really well. So just change the sides of the charcoal as you're sharpening it, and eventually it will come to a point that can give you some really nice lines and also for value as well. Also assemble several different types of charcoal, so maybe get out a hard, soft, and maybe medium, so your H, HB, and B. And then don't be afraid to maybe set up some lines about kind of where the drawing's bottom edge is, where the top edge is, and also where the sides kind of line up. This gives you an idea of where you're going to place the picture onto your paper when you're doing your drawing. Now you can move on to the next step, where you can start to block in some of the shapes. Once you set up your picture, you should start to block in your basic shapes. That's what I use as my second step when I'm transforming the drawing into a little bit more of a detailed stage. When doing the basic structure of your drawing, I would recommend using something I call straight line construction. Straight line construction is where you use lighter lines and only straight lines to construct the basic structure of your drawing. This basic structure can make it easier for you to get into the detailed shapes as well as the values later on in your drawing. Make sure that you spend a lot of time in this basic structure stage because you want to make sure that the overall drawing is correct before you move on. Make sure that you're double checking the angles of your shape, the overall outline of your shape, as well as how the other shapes fit inside the overall big shape. This is really important for going on into later detail. Also in this step, I recommend using the hard charcoal of Nitram. The hard charcoal can make it a little bit easier for you to have lighter lines. This way that when you put pressure onto the charcoal, you can go much lighter in this step. So make sure that when you're doing this, you have lighter pressure with your hand when drawing with your sharpened piece of charcoal. Next, you want to move into your detailed shapes and your value guidelines. So detailed shapes are a little bit more of a detailed way to look at your drawing. So maybe you're putting in some more structure lines and a little bit more shapes inside of the big shape you've already created. And then value guidelines are something that can help you move to the next step. So maybe putting in some lines where there's a change between dark and light in what you're trying to draw. Now, by details, I mean the smaller shapes in your picture. So the smaller shapes can be made up of a variety of smaller turning points. For example, this area right here, which can look a bit intimidating because of all its little things it has going on in here, can be easily simplified down by just looking at the simple angles and turning points that each shape holds. For example, this little area right here, it may look like it has a little rounded part here. So you can take your hard Nitram charcoal and block in the little minute angles that make up each shape. By the end of this step, you want to have lots of information for you to understand how the drawing is sitting in space and the structure is a little bit more closer to the subject matter you are trying to draw. Also in this step, I want to stress the importance of setting yourself up for the next step. The next step will be putting in some values, so it's important to put in some value guidelines. Value guidelines are lighter lines, so I'd say about that light. They'd be a little bit lighter than the lines you've been using for your straight line construction. Now, where you put these value guidelines is important. I would pick areas between light and dark, so areas that are really easy to see where the light and dark has changed. For example, this petal right here, on this side of the drawing, there's going to be a bit more of a light side, and on this side of the drawing, it's going to be a darker side. So to separate these two sides, I put in a smaller, lighter value shape so I can understand later when I go into value where I'm going to put in the dark and where I'm going to leave it lighter. Next, you will want to go into the basic value stage. So you'll want to put in the darks and lights of where you marked your value guidelines by using the different charcoals. Basic values can be something very tricky when transforming your drawing. You would want to make sure you don't overmodel your picture. By this I mean overlooking too many of the little values where your picture can get too complicated. So what I would recommend doing is a 3-value system. That means focusing on the dark, the medium, and the light values. When doing this, you can also use your different varieties of charcoal to accomplish these different value ranges. So maybe use a harder charcoal for the lighter values and use a much softer charcoal for something really dark like the background. When drawing in heavy values, don't be afraid to use your finger to rub in some of the charcoal. Also, you could use a Q-tip or maybe a drawing stump if you have one. I think it's just easier to do that sometimes because then the charcoal in the drawing really sticks to the paper and can get the true darks that you want to accomplish, or maybe some of the middle values that are tricky to get set into your paper. So as you continue to work on your value stage, get the whole picture down in a 3 basic value stage so that when you move on to a little bit more of the complicated value ranges, you're ready and set up with an idea of how the picture sits in space. After you've finished that, go into the completion stage. So take a big picture look at your drawing and see something that you might want to change with it, go through a couple corrections, and making sure that your values that you are putting on your paper matches what you're trying to draw. Now that you have taken the whole picture to a complete stage of covered value, you want to move into a more advanced stage of your value. I call this the complete value stage. You've had your dark, middle, and light, and now you want to focus on putting in the value relationships that are a little bit more subtle. For example, maybe here it goes from light to a lighter middle tone to a middle tone all the way to a dark. And there's lots of variation in there that you can try and accomplish with your charcoal. So look very closely at your reference picture and start to pick up on the little value changes of your drawing. This can help the drawing take a little bit more form as you work on it. When doing this, also pay attention to something I call value relationships. So how dark is this dark compared to this value? Or how light is this value compared to the middle tone value there? This can help you correct your values so that they are working with each other and the picture is correct compared to your reference picture. Also, when doing this step, it's really important to step back every once in a while and look at the picture as a whole. Sometimes when you don't look at the picture as a whole, you can lose its overall big look, I call it. The big look is important to grasp because you want the picture to work together as a whole. You don't want to just accomplish a bunch of different little details in your drawing. So make sure you're stepping back, you're squinting at it, you're looking at it from different angles every once in a while just to give yourself little corrections and making sure that your drawing is staying on the right track to being finished and you're not going off into somewhere where you might get a value too dark or something too light. So that's also a very important thing to do during this step. Finally, your last step is to go into the completion stage. So take an overall look at your drawing and correct any values, shapes, lines, clean up your paper, maybe cut it into a size you want it, and you have finished your picture. Now you're going to move into your finishing stage. This is when you're going to pull the whole drawing together. Maybe do some final corrections of your drawing, making sure you're stepping back and looking at it, squint at it. Some of the things you want to make sure you're paying attention to during this stage is the lines, the shapes of the drawing, the edges between one value and another, and also the value relationships that we talked about previously. Use your kneaded eraser too if you'd like to pull out some of the lights in your drawing. The lights are also something that's really important that holds your drawing together, so this is an important step to do as you're finishing your picture as well. Now you have a basic idea of how I would draw a Nitram charcoal drawing. So you can use these basic 6 steps in a drawing that you want to create, whether it's the exact orchid or something else you might want to draw. Also, I would love to see your guys' artwork that you create. So my Instagram is art_Fina1. You can message me, or on Facebook, I am just Fina Mooney, and I would love to see what you guys create. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope you're excited to learn how to draw and start using Nitram.